For this, I prepared a little project which will render this here onto the screen. And you'll find this starting project attached to this lecture here. So this is a simple React project created with Create React App. It runs on a version later than 16.8, and that's important. You need to have React 16.8 or higher, otherwise you can't use React hooks. Well, and other than that, there's nothing special in here. It's just a normal React application with a couple of components I already built for you. So let me quickly walk you through what we have here before we start working with that and before we start using React hooks. We have our index.js file, which is pretty trivial. I'm importing index.css, which sets up some global styling, imports a font, sets up some, global styling for the font, for buttons, and that's it. And then here I render the app component, which is living in the app.js file. It's a very simple component, doesn't do much. It will do more later, which is why I have this extra component. But for now, it just returns the ingredients component, which we get from the components folder, there from the ingredients subfolder, and then from the ingredients.js file, which would be this file here. Now in there, I in the end have a div. I render an ingredient form component, which lives in the ingredient form.js file. And then I have a section where I render the search component, which unsurprisingly lives in the search.js file. And if we have a look at the ingredient form, then we see that this is a component that uses a custom card component, which lives in the UI folder. We'll have a look at that folder in a second. And in the ingredient form here, I do have my form here. I have a section, which is a normal form with a couple of inputs, 2 inputs to be precise, for a title and amount, with a button. And I'm also using React Memo here to wrap this component to avoid unnecessary re-renders, so that this component only re-renders when the props it depends on changed, and not always when the parent component changed. So not always when ingredients changed, but only when ingredients changed and we're passing new props to ingredient form, which right now we're never doing. So right now ingredient form won't re-render when ingredients re-renders. That's just a tiny side note. You'll learn about React Memo earlier in the course in the component deep dive module. Now that's the ingredients folder. Well, almost. We also have ingredient list. There I'm just rendering a list of ingredients. Right now we're not getting any ingredients from anywhere, and therefore, we're not using this. We'll use it throughout this module, of course. And in the search.js file, there I also use React Memo for the same reasons I do it in the ingredient form, and I just output a search box, this input here in a card. And that's, of course, this box here at the bottom. I got a couple of CSS files there too. You can, of course, go through them if you want. Just a bit of styling to make this all look good, so that we have a nice looking app to work with. Now in the UI folder, I prepared a couple of UI components like the card here, which simply wraps whatever we pass between its opening and closing tag and gives it this nice card look with these styles here. I got the error modal, which I'm right now not using, but which we will use throughout this module. And this is just using React Fragment, which is a replacement for the aux component we manually built throughout this course. It's just a wrapper component to satisfy this condition of having one root wrapper per React component, so that we don't have to use an unnecessary div here. Then I render a backdrop there and the modal itself, where we can output a custom content, like a custom error message. We got a button to close that. Clicking the backdrop should also close the modal, but it will be up to us to wire up this logic. I'm also using React Memo here, and here I got some styles for the modal. And I have a loading indicator, which is just a spinner, which we can render to indicate that we're, loading data. So that is what we have here. These are the components I'm giving you, and right now this app doesn't do anything. You can enter something here, but hitting this button won't do anything, because now it's up to us to wire this up. And if you watch closely, you'll see that all these components here, they're all functional components. There's not a single class-based component in there. And we'll leave these components as functional components. So we'll not change that, because as you will now learn in this module, we can build an entire React app with just functional components with the help of hooks. Therefore, let's dive right in and let's learn about our first hook, the most important hook probably.